So for this session, after the session, participants are expected to, number one, learn practical methods for delivering the English curriculum for in key stages 2 and 3. At the same time, they are expected to understand some strategies to assess and support learners' progress in English. For the outline of my presentation, I'll be talking first I'll be talking first about key stage 2, and then it will be followed by key stage 3. So first, I'll be talking about the teaching pedagogy for that specific key stage. And then I'll also be talking about the assessment and strategies. And then I'll be giving a key takeaway after the presentation. So for this one, the question is, what happens when we integrate theoretical concepts with hands-on experience? Primarily, the effect will be, or the result will be, we will be able, or teachers will be able to achieve effective teaching and learning. So, in this presentation, I hope to present some practical application of the pedagogies for key stage 2 and 3. So for the next slide, since Sir Jerome is already done talking about the key stage, which focuses on literacy, I'll be talking about the key stage 2, which primarily focus on language, and I will also talk about key stage 3, which focuses on text. So for key stage 2, so here, the pedagogy for key stage 2 is communicative language teaching, or CLT, wherein in my presentation, I'll be following the concepts presented by Richards in 2006, where he emphasized that in communicative language teaching, activities to be provided by learners should be applied or should be used in real life communication. That is why, open and close parenthesis, it should be authentic. According to Richards as well, in 2006, he has presented in his book 4 characteristics of CLT, or communicative language teaching. So the first one is people learn a language best when using it to do things rather than through studying how language works and practicing rules. So it is really not effective to learn the second language, which is English, if we are just going to read them on the books, but rather CLT emphasizes the use of language in practical, real-life situations over theoretical rule-based learning. At the same time, for the second characteristic, according to Richards, people learn a language through communicating it. So students, the central to CLT, or communicative language teaching, is the idea that language is best learned through communication. So for key stage 2, it is really expected for our teachers to allow our learners to use the language so that they'll be able to communicate using it. For the third one, classroom activities should be meaningful and involve real communication. So CLT encourages activities that reflect authentic language use and real communicative tasks. In other words, teachers should really incorporate activities or classroom activities that it really has a use in the daily lives of our learners. And then for the fourth one, both accuracy and fluency are the goals in communicative language teaching. So communicative language teaching should have a balance or has a balance between developing both accurate language, particularly on the grammar or the structure, and the ability to speak fluently. So for this one, we should not only focus on the grammar itself, but rather it should be balanced. It should be balanced on accuracy and fluency. For example, so how do we apply communicative language teaching in our classroom? I have here an example, which is making a phone call. So the task here is students practice making phone calls to book appointments or inquire about services. So they will do a role play as callers and receptionists. So that is the task. And then the purpose of this particular activity is that it helps learners use language in a practical, communicative way, learning the appropriate phrases and expressions for real situations. So they'll be able to know how to actually answer a call, and then what are the utterances that they are supposed to use whenever they answer or whenever they make a phone call. Another example is email invitation. So the task here is students write an email inviting a friend to a weekend event. So they need to include details like time, location, and activities. Just like what was mentioned in the characteristics of CLT, it does not only focus on an oral, it could also be used in written discourses, such as email invitation. And then the purpose of this particular activity is that it helps learners learn how to write an email with a clear purpose using the language, which is English, appropriate for the situation. Another example is breaking news report. So the task here is students create and present a written news report about a recent event. This involves researching details, organizing information, and using clear, concise language to write the report in a journalistic manner. And then the purpose of this particular activity is it encourages authentic communication by mimicking real-world reporting and improving skills in organizing and presenting ideas logically. And we may be able to spot students who are good in journalism. So I have here a specific example. Actually, this particular example is not done by Key Stage 2 students, but I think this particular breaking news is applicable as well to Key Stage 2. It's just teachers need to guide our learners as to how they will be doing this breaking news report. So let's take a look at the video.
Govern what we are at basic healthcare project of people of the land under the leadership of Governor of
Yes, my name is Christopher Flores. Ito yung choice ko. At ang makatulong sa mga pamilya. Lalo na sa mga nila sa
So I have here another example.
We are here at Sitio 5, Barangay Pinugay, Baras Rizal, where we can locate the Barangay Hall of Pinugay. And over there, we can see the I Love Banggas Bangkalas that represents how they love Baras, and Dampak, Barasenya uses word bang than super over something that they want to say.
Para sa akin, doon sa mga ano natin na katulad ng yung mga.
So in the sample videos, the students were able to do news reporting on some of the most recent local news in my own context. So let's keep in mind that grammar is still considered important in communicative language teaching. But I will emphasize on this, it is integrated into communicative activities rather than teaching grammar in isolation or explicit teaching. So we really have to integrate the teaching of grammar in a communicative manner. At the same time, instead of doing a lot of corrections with the students, errors are seen as part of the learning process, but not necessarily unimportant. So there are different ways as to how we can correct the structure of the utterances, be it in written or in spoken discourses of our learners. It's just let's not bombard them with a lot of errors. So we teachers or the teachers may actually utilize different error correction methods or strategies. And then lastly, communicative language teaching is not limited to speaking. It also involves listening, reading, and writing in communicative contexts. Because there is a conception, I think, that when we talk of communicative language teaching, it's only for speaking. But no, other macro skills may also be touched or be improved in whenever we use communicative language teaching. Okay, so let's now go to key stage 3. For this particular key stage, the focus now is on text. So here, the pedagogy for key stage 3 is on its genre-based approach. So I opted to use the concepts of Highland in 2003 in my discussion for this one. So Highland emphasized that in genre-based approach, our learners should be exposed to different authentic texts of different genres so that they'll be able to understand how are these genres are written. And then, according to Tardy in 2019, the basic principle of genre-based language teaching is that awareness of the forms, purposes, and the social context of text will aid in writing development. Which means the central belief here is that we don't just write, we write something to achieve some purpose. And it is a way of getting something done. And then for the next one, when we talk of genre-based approach, the texts here are organized in various ways to meet the purpose. So what's the purpose of doing this kind of text? It should be very clear to the learners whenever we teach them. And then an effective text has a distinct sequence of stages that help it accomplish its goals. So let's take a look at the model of Highland of genre teaching and learning cycle. As you can see, there are 3 aspects in the model. We have here the modeling, joint construction, and independent construction of the text. So by having prior understanding and experiences of stage 1 and 2, which are modeling and joint construction, the students are ordered to write a certain type of genre, which they are exposed to. And then the student write a given genre, a genre type independently. That is for the last aspect, which is independent construction of text. And then the teacher must be sure that the students really understand the features of a certain genre, such as the communicative purpose, structure element of the text, grammatical patterns, usage, relevant vocabulary usage, and the textual vocabulary, textual devices as well. So I have here a specific example as to how we can apply this particular model of Highland. So in news article, this one is an informative genre. Under modeling or teacher-led, the teacher's task is the teacher chooses a news and a news story, and then reads it aloud to the class. And then for the students follow along discussing the headline, lead, and the structure. So they highlight key parts of the article. By that, the students now are being exposed to that type of genre. And then the focus of this particular activity is that they have to understand how a news article is structured and how it presents information. So the outcome for this particular activity is that students learn how to write a clear and organized news article. And that is under modeling or teacher-led. For the second aspect of the model of Highland, we have here the joint construction, or teacher and students will now work together. So the task here is that the teacher helps the class choose a topic and then guides them in writing a news article together. The keyword here is a guide, because under this particular aspect of the model of Highland, the teacher needs to provide the guidance to the learners. For the students' activity, learners now need to brainstorm the facts for the article, such as the who, what, the where, and when, and then why. And then students work with the teacher to create the article outline and then write the lead paragraph. Remember po, teachers will just guide. Okay? The students will be the one to do the task, not the teacher. It's just the students need a guidance. And then together, the class writes the body of the article. So what's the focus of this? It allows learners to practice writing a news article as a class. And then the possible outcome for this is that students work together to write a complete news article, learning how to organize information. This does not only focus on writing an article, but we are also teaching our learners to collaborate with one another. And then for the last aspect of the model of Highland, which is the independent construction, particularly student-led, the task now of the teacher here is the teacher asks students to write their own news articles based on a different event. And then the activity of the students now, they will now do research about the topic, write their article, and organize it with a headline, lead, body, and conclusion. And then they revise their work for clarity and accuracy. And then the focus here is that the learners will be able to write a news article independently. And then the outcome is learners apply what they've learned to write their own clear, well-organized news article. So I have here a sample. This article was particularly written by my former students when I was still teaching. As you can see, if we will be guiding our learners to write this kind of a text, and if we were able to polish the article, later on we can actually send that for a possible publication. I know that the concept of a publication in stage 2 is that they may opt to post it online, and we consider that as publication as well. But we can also consider polishing the paper for the news article written by the students, and then later on send it to the division office if they have their division newspaper, district newspaper, or regional newspaper as well. In this case, this was sent to the regional office in Calabarzon, which is the tinig ng Calabarzon. So here's the body of the text. And then here's another sample. These are all written by the learners. Again, this is the body. And then another one, which was sent in the division office. So here, if we will be able to teach them, guide them as to how we are expected them to guide in doing a certain genre of a text, we'll be able to come up with a well-written text by our learners. And then in terms of assessment, I just have here general tips for assessment. So number one, use rubrics for consistency and transparency. So a rubric sets clear grading criteria for content, structure, and language use, ensuring fairness and transparency. And then for the second one, we also have to focus on both content and the form. So we have to focus on clear communication while guiding students to improve grammar and accuracy instead of marking every mistake. Highlight key areas to improve. Last slide na po ito. And then for the third one, provide formative feedback pointing out strengths and specific areas for improvement. And lastly, let us encourage our learners to do self-assessment or peer assessment to involve students in the learning process. So that's the end of my presentation. I would like to end this by saying our small actions, when multiplied by many, have the power to create lasting change. And we are all doing this para sa bayan and para sa bata. So thank you for this.